The Miz just committed the most shocking act of violence in his entire career by dropping Carmelo Hayes with a devastating skull-crushing finale that left the rising star motionless on the canvas, and if you're not absolutely stunned by this vicious attack that nobody saw coming, you clearly don't understand how completely this changes the dynamics between WWE's Hollywood A-lister and one of the company's most promising young talents. What we witnessed wasn't just an unexpected attack, it was a declaration of war from a veteran who just proved he's willing to destroy anyone who threatens his position in the WWE hierarchy. The sight of Carmelo Hayes, one of SmackDown's most confident and charismatic performers, being blindsided by the Miz's signature finisher and crumpling to the mat like a broken puppet will be replayed for years as one of the most unexpected moments of violence in modern WWE. This wasn't just shocking, it was reality-shattering for anyone who thought the Miz had evolved beyond his ruthless heel tendencies. The Miz just took out Carmelo Hayes. This is absolute chaos. Those weren't just surprised words from shocked commentators, they were horrified reactions from people who realized they had just witnessed the beginning of what could become the most personal and bitter rivalry on the blue brand. The urgency in their voices captured the gravity of this career-defining attack. You want to talk about attacks that fundamentally alter career trajectories? The Miz didn't just hit Carmelo with a wrestling move, he destroyed the young star's momentum and credibility with a calculated assault designed to send a message that veterans still run SmackDown and cocky newcomers need to learn their place. The setup for this attack was so perfectly executed that absolutely nobody saw it coming. Carmelo Hayes had been cutting a promo about his championship aspirations and his belief that the new generation was taking over WWE when suddenly the Miz's music hit and the A-lister made his way to the ring. But here's what makes this attack absolutely different from typical wrestling confrontations: the Miz didn't come out to trade insults or start a verbal sparring match. He marched down that ramp with clear violent intent, and the look in his eyes told everyone that words were done and action was about to begin. The most shocking aspect of this assault was how quickly it happened. Carmelo barely had time to react before the Miz was in the ring, and before anyone could process what was happening, Hayes was being lifted into position for the skull-crushing finale. Here's a question that's going to reveal just how unprecedented this moment truly was. When was the last time the Miz launched such a sudden and violent attack without any verbal buildup or warning that something physical was about to happen? The actual execution of the skull-crushing finale was brutal in its precision. The Miz drove Carmelo's face into the canvas with such force that the impact echoed through the arena like a gunshot. The way Hayes' body went completely limp after impact made everyone realize this wasn't a standard wrestling move, this was an assault. But the most devastating moment came after the initial attack, when the Miz should have been walking away satisfied. Instead, he grabbed Carmelo's motionless body and delivered a second skull-crushing finale with even more force than the first, proving this wasn't about making a statement, this was about inflicting maximum damage. The decision to hit a second finisher on an already unconscious opponent crossed every line of sportsmanship and revealed the Miz to be operating with a level of malice that shocked even his harshest critics. This wasn't the reality TV star playing a character, this was genuine hatred manifesting as violence. Quick question for the move analysis experts: how much more dangerous is a skull-crushing finale when the victim is already unconscious and unable to protect themselves from the impact? The most infuriating aspect of this attack is what motivated the Miz to commit such violence against someone who hadn't directly challenged or disrespected him. According to Backstage sources, the A-lister has been increasingly frustrated by the attention and opportunities being given to younger stars like Carmelo while veterans struggle for screen time. The investigation into what triggered this attack reveals a pattern of resentment that's been building for months. The Miz has apparently been making comments backstage about entitled younger wrestlers who haven't paid their dues, and Carmelo's confident promos about the new generation apparently pushed him over the edge. But perhaps the most shocking detail is that this attack may have been premeditated rather than spontaneous. Security footage shows the Miz watching Carmelo's segment on a backstage monitor with an expression of pure rage, then immediately heading to the gorilla position to execute his assault. The premeditation makes this attack exponentially more serious. This wasn't a heated moment that got out of control, this was calculated violence from someone who made a conscious decision to injure another performer and then executed that plan with cold precision. Here's another question for the psychology experts: what does it say about the Miz's mental state that he could watch Carmelo's promo, plan an attack, and then execute it with such calm brutality? The most disturbing aspect of this situation is how the Miz has responded since the attack. Instead of showing remorse or concern for Carmelo's well-being, he's been posting on social media about teaching lessons to disrespectful punks and suggesting that Carmelo got what he deserved. The complete lack of empathy or accountability reveals something genuinely concerning about the Miz's current mindset. When a veteran wrestler publicly celebrates injuring a younger colleague, it creates a toxic environment that could inspire similar behavior from others who feel threatened by rising stars. But the most shocking revelation is that other veterans have reportedly been privately supporting the Miz's actions. Multiple established wrestlers have apparently expressed frustration with what they view as preferential treatment for younger performers, and the Miz's attack is being seen by some as justified pushback. The generational divide this attack has exposed creates a dangerous dynamic where established stars might feel justified in using violence to protect their positions. If attacking younger wrestlers becomes viewed as acceptable behavior, WWE's workplace environment could deteriorate rapidly. The medical update on Carmelo Hayes' condition is absolutely concerning. Initial reports suggest a severe concussion from the repeated impacts, potential jaw injury, and the psychological trauma of being blindsided and unable to defend himself. The 29-year-old rising star faces weeks of recovery from what should have been a routine promo segment. Here's a question for the medical professionals: what kind of long-term effects could someone experience from receiving 2 consecutive skull-crushing finales, and could this attack have permanent consequences for Carmelo's career? The most infuriating discovery is that WWE officials were apparently watching this entire situation unfold and did nothing to prevent the second skull-crushing finale. Security was slow to respond, referees hesitated to intervene, and by the time anyone took action, Carmelo had already absorbed devastating damage. The investigation into why officials failed to protect Carmelo raises serious questions about WWE's safety protocols. When a performer is clearly in danger and officials don't immediately intervene, it suggests either inadequate training or a culture where violence is tolerated for entertainment value. But perhaps the most controversial aspect of this entire situation is how WWE has responded to the Miz's attack. Instead of suspending him or taking disciplinary action, they've apparently begun promoting a feud between him and Carmelo, essentially rewarding violence with increased screen time and storyline opportunities. The corporate decision to capitalize on this attack rather than punish it sends a terrible message about acceptable behavior. When a company profits from workplace violence, they're essentially endorsing it and encouraging similar incidents in the future. The fan reaction to this attack has been absolutely divided. Some viewers are praising The Miz for showing intensity and creating a must-see feud, while others are expressing genuine concern that the attack crossed lines and shouldn't be celebrated as entertainment. Here's a question about fan responsibility: should wrestling fans celebrate shocking violence like this as great entertainment, or does that celebration enable and encourage behavior that could genuinely hurt performers? The most shocking response has come from Carmelo Hayes himself, who posted a message from his hospital bed promising career-ending revenge on The Miz. The threat suggests that once he recovers, this feud will escalate into something even more violent and personal. The investigation into Carmelo's mindset reveals genuine rage about being attacked and humiliated on live television. Sources close to him report that he's taking this extremely personally and views The Miz's assault not just as a wrestling angle but as a genuine attack on his character and reputation. But the most intriguing element is what this attack reveals about The Miz's insecurity regarding his own position. For someone who has been a multi-time champion and major star, his decision to violently attack a younger wrestler suggests deep fear about becoming irrelevant. The psychological profile of someone who resorts to violence to maintain relevance is genuinely sad beneath the surface. The Miz has accomplished so much in his career, but instead of embracing a mentor role, he's choosing to tear down the next generation out of insecurity and desperation. The comparison to other veteran vs rising star attacks throughout wrestling history is inevitable, but The Miz's assault on Carmelo has unique elements. The sudden nature, the repeated finisher, and the apparent resentment about generational change create a dynamic we haven't seen before. Here's a question for the wrestling historians: where does this attack rank among the most shocking veteran-on-young-star assaults in WWE history, and what makes it particularly noteworthy? The most important consideration is whether this attack will ultimately help or hurt both men's careers. For The Miz, it creates renewed interest and positions him as a dangerous heel, but it also reveals his insecurity. For Carmelo, it creates sympathy and a revenge storyline, but it also shows him being dominated and helpless. The testimonies from other wrestlers reveal mixed opinions about whether this attack was good for business. It created buzz and got people talking, one performer noted. But it also made Carmelo look weak and reinforced the idea that veterans can bully younger talent without consequences. But perhaps the most terrifying implication is that this could inspire other frustrated veterans to launch similar attacks. If The Miz faces no real consequences and actually benefits from his violence, what's stopping every other veteran who feels threatened from doing the same thing? The ripple effects of normalizing this behavior could fundamentally alter WWE's culture in dangerous ways. When violence becomes an accepted method for establishing dominance over younger talent, the work environment becomes toxic and potentially physically hazardous for rising stars. The most shocking development is that The Miz has apparently been recruiting other veterans to join him in what he's calling a campaign to restore respect. Sources suggest he's been having conversations about forming a veteran faction designed to put younger wrestlers in their place. Here's a final question for the faction warfare experts: if The Miz successfully forms a veteran stable designed to attack and suppress young talent, what would be the long-term consequences for WWE's future? The coming weeks will reveal whether Carmelo Hayes can recover from this attack and deliver the revenge he's promised, or whether The Miz's assault has permanently damaged the young star's momentum and confidence. Either way, SmackDown will never be the same after this shocking act of violence. The wrestling world is reeling from The Miz's brutal attack on Carmelo Hayes, and the generational divide it represents threatens to tear WWE's locker room apart. The A-lister has proven he's willing to do whatever it takes to maintain his position, even if that means destroying the careers of talented young performers who represent WWE's future. The Miz didn't just drop Carmelo Hayes with a skull-crushing finale, he dropped a bomb on SmackDown's entire power structure and created a conflict that will define the Blue brand for months to come. The veteran's insecurity has manifested as violence, and now everyone must choose sides in a war between established stars desperate to stay relevant and rising talents fighting for their rightful place.